If you love me, please don't judge me. Got my hands tied, the power's above me. Don't shoot the messenger, I'm just a puppet here. If you wanna place blame, then look to the puppeteer. Family, fortune, envy, jealousy, privilege, passed on, legacy, secret, sabotage, borderline, felony, suicide, subtract, selfish, pedigree, yeah.
All right, so first, where are we?
We're at my warehouse. I have a small collection of things, as you can see, and needed somewhere to put it all. Use this place, obviously, to store cars, but have a fun kind of lounge area, and have also used this to host team parties and dinners and kickoffs and sit around with some friends and hang out.
All right, so what's this guy?
This is my first four-wheeled vehicle that I raced. It's called a Superlight. Used to race this on a stadium floor. There's this off-road division that would move around all the football stadiums in the country, and that's where I got my start.
And this one?
The official start, 1979 JR50. I got this for Christmas when I was 4.
Really?
Rode it that afternoon, and the first vehicle I raced. And not only did I learn, obviously, to ride on this thing, but my 2 younger brothers have, and my nephew.
Have you ridden it since?
I have. It is supposed to run, but it hasn't been on in a while. And it's all original. This front plate is an add-on, but the tank, seat, all of it. I mean, it's 40-something years old.
We were talking about the Baja 1000 during the interview.
Yeah, that truck, I ended up crashing it twice in my brief 6 races that I had in it, but the Baja 1000 was the big one. It was restored and went on and was raced in a division. Somebody else owned it. We found it and put it back exactly as it was when I raced it. So when I look back and think of that crash, I remember onto that straightaway, the lights were pointing to the sky, and I over the intercom yelled at my co-rider, "Hey man, wake up." Next thing you know, I'm waking up to us crashing.
Wow. And it's normal to be dozing off in that race.
2 of my heroes did the race straight through. The race was won in 26 hours.
Yeah.
I thought if those old guys can do it, I can do it.
Right.
I should have split up the race. And that's how the majority of the people handle it, have at least one other driver, if not 2.
Yeah. All right, so what are these guys?
This is my 67 Camaro. It's been through 2 or 3 generations now. My wife grew up in a Beetle Bug, as most people did, so she saw that 59 and had to get it for herself, so that's hers. This is my first car I got. It's 51 Merc. Shaved door handles on the deck, fuzzy dice in the rearview mirror.
How cool is that?
It was awesome. This was a birthday gift, Woody wagon. Grew up in Southern California, saw these roaming the streets, and had to have one, and Shani got me one.
All right, so tell me about these guitars.
I have some friends in the music space and been able to trade out some helmets for guitars. A couple, I think one was a birthday gift, but the one in the center here, acoustic guitars from Jack Johnson. A friend, and he drugged me out on stage at one of the shows and let me play the tambourine.
Nervous for that?
I unwillingly went out. I was kind of called out, and
was this liquid courage? Or?
Yeah, that definitely played a role. And then I felt like if I ever had that moment, I'd be like full cowbell and just let it rip. And I froze. I was just like lamely hitting the tambourine on stage. It was here in Charlotte at one of the shows, and it was a subpar performance on my behalf.
That's so cool, though.
It was cool.
So the 7th championship trophy.
Yeah.
Kind of a rare display of heightened emotion on your end, right?
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, probably the most fun I had in a year of oh no, that was that one. Sorry, wrong one. Got my years mixed up. Luckily, I have a few of these.
When you win 7, they all blend together, right?
The last one, no, that was absolutely a wild one with, it was going for my 7th and honoring Ricky Hendrick. He had this thing with 7, and I had just the wildest experience in the race. Feeling he was present in there.
Describe the emotion from the end of that race.
When I heard clear on the back straightaway, coming to take the white flag, I was convinced he was in the car riding with me. I mean, it was just wild. I was overcome with goosebumps. I could feel him, thought he was there, ran another lap and a half, and won my 7th championship.
Want to head over
Oh,
to the
I see what you're doing.
the bar? All right, so this is a pretty unique feature of the warehouse, right?
Found this bar in Philadelphia. It was built in 1890. It was in a hotel that was being remodeled. We took it out of that hotel, shipped it here. All of this space it's only 3 pieces. So to watch these guys come in with forklifts and just, you know, strength and power to put all this up. I mean, it's all solid cherry wood. So it was quite a process, but such an amazing feature for my, you know, man space.
Wow, it's really cool. I was told I need to ask you about your motorized bar stools.
It's been a lot of fun. They are a bit tippy, especially when you're a bit tipsy. So we've had a few crashes out here in the parking lot.
I was going to say, I hear you've been known to terrorize the neighborhood, or at least back in the day.
Yeah, especially when I have a crew event here, and I turn to the guys and say, guys, I'm sorry, you know, they don't run. And I have some tools sitting over here. Within 20, 30 minutes, everything's running, and it's all out in the parking lot or going up down the street.
So tell me about this uniform.
Stadium off-road photo, or fire suit that I used to wear. My grandmother insisted that I wore a guardian angel.
And she stitched that, right?
She did. She stitched it and made it. She was giving me a pin, and as you can imagine with the seatbelts in the car bouncing around, the pin was a bit of a problem. So a lot of my earlier suits had that sewn on there from my grandmother. One of my friends, such a knucklehead, he held a lighter to me. When I asked him what he was doing, he said, well, I just wanted to make sure it was fire resistant. You're an idiot.
So, I mean, this is impressive memorabilia, obviously, you have here. In any other walk of life, this would make you a professional hoarder, though, right?
It does, yeah. And as I mentioned, my parents started collecting everything, and I just kept it up.
You needed to tweak your workouts from NASCAR to IndyCar.
IndyCar is much more upper body focused and a lot higher heart rate. For me, I have a low heart rate, and the longer the event, the more aerobic the event is. I'm just better at endurance events. When you shorten the distance and the heart rate goes up, that's against other competitors in my age group, that's never been my strength. For NASCAR, the races are 4 hours long. Going on a 4-hour bike ride and staying hydrated and having energy from nutrition, and then the mental commitment to sit on the bike for 4 hours was much like a cup race. But for IndyCar, 10K efforts, being on a rowing machine and doing 20-minute intervals on the rowing machine or a ski erg machine, you know, the really high heart rate, shorter bursts of energy, really is what IndyCar needs.
Starts off slow. Over here. There you go.
How many marathons and triathlons have you done?
One marathon, I'd say 10 half marathons, and then 170.3 triathlon, and then a bunch of sprints and Olympic distance triathlons.
And what's on your bucket list of kind of athletic endeavors to still do?
New York Marathon is on my hit list.
You've done the Boston.
Done Boston. I've always wanted to do a full Ironman. I haven't been in the pool in a few years, so that seems really far away to consciously go after that. But I love to mountain bike, and with having a home in Colorado, there are a few big mountain bike races there, like the Leadville 100, and that's been high on my hit list too.
With Lance?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's ridden it in a few years.
Yeah.
Probably 5 or 6 different buddies that I mountain bike with on a regular basis all did it. And I'm on a text chain with all those guys, and watching them get ready, and the harassment, and then the harassment following the event's been pretty cool, and I look forward to doing that one day.
How long before you think you end up doing it?
It's in August, end of August. I probably need to look at the calendar. I feel like with the amount of time I spend in Colorado in the summer, I might not ride the time I want to ride, but I could at least finish it.
How did you find working out helped you mentally?
It's a great stress relief. And once I burn off that frustration, the mental clarity, and then I go back into my visualization skills that I learned and start thinking about a track, the car, and the setup, whatever it might be.
People kind of questioned whether it made sense to do a big bike race before a professional race that you had, and you made the point before that actually you found it helped you.
Oh yeah. If anyone's worked to run a marathon or a triathlon, any of these longer distance endurance races, you learn just how committed you have to be, how painful it is, the mental challenge that comes with it, preparation, the more committed I was on training and preparing.
What consumes your thoughts on a day in, day out basis?
It's, there's a lot going on in life now, so, balance of work life, family life. But in that headspace of racing, I had a swim coach teach me how to really visualize my start, my stroke, my turn. So I've adapted that to my car racing stuff, and depending on the upcoming race or the race that I just had, as I'm building my notes or preparing for the next one, I literally drive laps in my head.
Sometimes in bed too, right?
Yeah, that's the best way to fall asleep for me. Just sit there and run laps in my head. It's funny because I'll micromanage in my thought the lap, and I'll make a mistake and I'll start over. And so I keep working my way around whatever the track is, and then before I know it, I'm asleep.
Is there a specific track that you most commonly go to, or?
A lot of times it's a track that I just left as I'm working on my notes to prepare for the upcoming race. And then the upcoming race, when I dive back into those notes, when I'm able to drive in the simulator or even have a chance to drive the track, it brings all that back, and I just get into that visualization space.
And does Shani know what you're doing?
I'm sure I've told her about it, but I don't know if she realizes how many nights I've fallen asleep to that.
There's not some look you get where she knows you're off in Never Never Land.
You bring up a good point. Around race weekends, even my friends know that there's Fun Jimmie and there's Race Jimmie. And when I go into Race Jimmie, I'm definitely much more inside my head and less social.
How do you beat yourself up?
I think on mistakes that I've made, some are visible, some are not. There are habits usually driven by fear in a race car that just get under my skin, and I'll start beating myself up on that, like, man, let go. Like, you just got to send it. The fear going in is always pretty intense and almost debilitating, but I've found that once I take that step forward and I'm in the moment, that I manage and deal with it much more. And then on the backside, the reward is so high, that's always kept me coming back.
You said almost debilitating.
Yeah.
How so?
Yeah, I think of recent times in the week leading into a championship, the day before the championship, the hours before you fire the engines to go racing. The weight of the moment, for myself, the thinking and overthinking, I mean, it just is an energy drain of epic proportion and paralyzing. And I've literally had to run through my head, like, step out of the motorhome, walk 2 driver introductions, get in the car, fire the engine, and walk myself through it, and it's wild. Fire the engine, and all of a sudden I wake back up and it's time to go.
As anybody gets older, responsibility increases.
Yeah.
Most often personal life becomes more consuming. How, if at all, do you think that impacts pursuit of excellence?
There are older athletes now that are highly successful, and I've worked up this theory in my own mind that it's due to who's around them. First and foremost, their spouse and the support they have from their spouse. And Shani's support and understanding of what makes me me and chasing my dream, none of this would have happened at the level that it has or continue to take place if it wasn't for her support. I'm as excited today to go racing as I was when I was a teenager, and I don't think that's very common, and it has so much to do with the people that are around you. I wish I was a little bit better of an example of winning championships still right now today, but to win 7, I've got into my 40s to win my 7th. We had children. I think that's a really good example of it. But currently it's Tom Brady. You continue to hear these stories about he's the first one in the building, the last one out. He's working with second string guys. He's working with the kicking team. Like, he is so embedded and ingrained in that team. That's what it takes to continue to operate it.
From what you recall from the when you found out about the alleged noose to before that race started, take me through what you remember.
Yeah, the discovery, I think, happened in the afternoon, and then it hit the press during the evening. Next day we're racing. I had already gone to bed and wasn't aware of what had happened. So I wake up in the morning, I'm traveling to Talladega for the race. I understand what's all going on. And I just reached out to Bubba and said, hey man, if you don't mind, I want to come stand with you during the national anthem. I just thought that would be a friend thing to do to show my support to Bubba. And then that word got out, and before I knew it, I had drivers and team managers all saying, hey,
we want to do that as well. Within a few hours, it evolved into what it did, and we all decided to push his car from where it was on the starting grid down to the head of the field, and show our support as an industry for Bubba. Just a crazy set of circumstances, and we were at the track the day before, and with an airplane flying above, pulling a Confederate flag. There were parades going on and protests outside the Talladega racetrack as well. It was just a very heated environment, and then the noose showing up in the garage stall, just kind of tipped the scales at that point.
And regardless if the FBI found out the noose wasn't there for that reason or not, how powerful was that moment on the track that day to be in it and seeing the sport coming together like that?
So powerful. And people walking that I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure where they stood. I wasn't sure what their feelings were. You work next to so many people in the sport. You don't know. And you see these people in passing. But I mean, everybody came out and pushed that car, got behind the car. I mean, it was incredible to see. It's such a powerful moment. When I found out that the noose wasn't there for the reasons we thought it was, I had such relief, and it was wild how the reaction was for others.
What do you mean?
The controversy that followed, and people that thought the sport was trying to make something of it, or remember just all the charged energy and atmosphere around that period of time. And I wish NASCAR handled things a little differently with their press release. I think a few words would have changed. If alleged news was in there, would have been different. But the backlash that followed was so different than the relief that I personally had, thinking, thank God.
Championships that you won, what role do you think the fact that you had a lot of consistency among people that worked for the team played into the success that you guys had?
For me, it is the foundation. I've only driven for a couple team owners. Sponsorship-wise, there's just a couple through my entire career. 17 years of marriage. I am the one that wants and needs a stable environment. So to drive for Rick Hendrick for all those years, to have Chad Knaus at the helm for all those years, that was the best environment for me to succeed.
Why do you think the relationship with Chad worked?
Our hunger together was unmatched by anyone else in the sport, and honestly, through the years, we changed the sport in so many ways due to our desire and work ethic.
And also, we should unmatched, not just at the time, but in history, right?
Testing was such a part of our success, and that's going to the racetrack and spending a day or two there to learn the track, update the car, bring, engineer new ideas for the car. And many drivers and teams want to do the bare minimum of testing. And at Hendrick, we had the resources to test all the time, and Chad and I literally would. It made our communication better. It made our team better. We certainly found and engineered more tricks to the car, made the cars faster, and that was our sauce. We would test and practice and try over and over and over, and we both wanted it.
How was the relationship unique?
We quickly had so much in common that a friendship, more than a work relationship started, like a friendship started. He became my third sibling. Like we truly have that connection like brothers.
I mean, I hear enough stories about him that I can understand he can be a reasonably difficult individual.
That's fair. And I think the mistake we both made at the end of our time together was maybe not evolving enough within our relationship to the new us. And when times got tough, Chad reverted back to the crew chief that he was when we first started.
Which was what?
Micromanaging. Explaining where I was making mistakes, what I needed to do, how I needed to work on it.
And what are you thinking when he's doing that? I mean, don't you want to tell him to F off?
I did. And that was kind of the start of the decay over probably a 5 or 8 year period of time. And he and I both so wish we could go back and correct that, because now looking back on it, it was a defense mechanism for him, and he was only doing it because he cared. And I just got tired of hearing it. So I started firing back. And then I would just start in the car while racing, instead of being focused on the job, I would start thinking about what the hell I was going to say to him.
Your dad was saying he was a spotter, and he was literally working right next to Chad as Chad would be destroying you on the radio, and he's like, it was just so uncomfortable.
People were like, how can you let him talk to you that way? But the trust we had for one another, I would say 80% of it was just the brutal truth. And honestly, that even though it hurt, even though it pissed me off at times, that brutal honesty is what made us get better. And just at the end, if we could have handled it in a different way with one another, we could have stayed together through the end of our careers and potentially got the 8th.
Was there a moment or an argument that took place where you just knew in your head at that point, this is done?
We just won the championship. We come back, start the 2017 season, and that really, really got under Chad's skin that I wanted to be in Aspen and not in Charlotte. And things started to get personal then. And him questioning where my heart was with the team and the time and effort I wanted to spend and be with the team was really kind of that starting fracture point.
How did you guys repair it?
We didn't, sadly.
But you're reasonably close again now, right?
Even though it was tough, we were still very honest with each other through the breakup and through the next chapter for both of us. And that honesty and respect and bond that we have just kind of worked its way through, and now we're at a spot that is really amazing. I'm running in the IMSA series and some endurance races in the IMSA series. Mr. Hendrick's involved, and Chad is involved as well, and we're working together again. So it's come full circle, and it's really just been out of the respect for one another and the honesty that we've had.
You mentioned a guy that helped you both in working through it, a therapist of some capacity, right?
It was very little reflection and very little finger pointing of, you said this, no, you did that. It was like, it's a mess. This is how we're gonna get better. And it really helped us for a while. And I would say as far back as probably 2013 is when we really had some professional help. And it got us to winning a championship in 2016, and then things kind of unraveled from there. But it was a big help, and a lot of things learned in that moment has helped me just with life in general, my personal life.
How so?
I always felt like there was work Jimmie and home Jimmie, and I quickly realized that we are who we are. There are different stressors on each side, but we all process, analyze, handle, react in the same way. It doesn't matter if it's personal or professional. And that's something that I thought, no, I'm just mad at work. I don't bring it home. Yeah, right. I don't overreact just at work on the radio with Chad. Yeah, I'm overreacting here in my personal life as well.
Are there tools that you learned or developed through the therapist that you found really helpful?
Awareness, listening, and I'm sure I can still be better at that. I'm sure Shani would agree.
Do you think she could tell a noticeable difference in you after you started going?
I think so. I mean, she lived through, all of those emotions, and they were all extreme, from extreme frustration to extreme elation and championships. And she'd be in the bus waiting for me. I'd come back from a Friday practice. We're terrible, and Chad and I are fighting, and this is wrong, that's wrong. All of a sudden, Sunday afternoon, we're in Victory Lane holding up a trophy, and we figured it out. So that just the emotional extremes that took place, she witnessed it all and has helped me navigate a ton of that. She gets far less credit than she ever deserves for really helping guide me through all of that stuff. 'Cause she was the brunt end in dealing with those emotions from week to week, month to month, year to year.
Describe the feeling when you knew it was over in NASCAR.
The grind, more than anything, had kind of changed me. And I wasn't holding up to the core values that I kind of held for myself. And I was just grumpy for the last couple of years. And, the breakup with Chad and moving on was probably the peak of it. There was some excitement in starting over and working through developing the team and bringing it back to its form, making the decision and saying it out loud that I was going to retire or stop NASCAR took this weight off my shoulders that I didn't know was really there.
And what was the feeling you first had where you started to know personally before you even articulated it to anybody?
There's just some moments of frustration of like, what am I doing this for? I don't need to be this pissed off at times, right? Like I don't need to do it. And then we'd win a race and you're like, oh, I was just, an overreaction, I'm good. Then you stop winning races and you don't have that moment to kind of reset. Changes things, and it became more serious, and I was saying it more regularly.
Was it hard to know that would kind of deprive you of the ability to keep going after 8?
It was never about the number of championships for me. I couldn't believe that I won 1, 5, 6, 7. I just couldn't believe it. My goal was to win a race. So I cleared that hurdle, in year 1. That put pressure on me that was part of the grind. And then I realized subconsciously what was weighing on me.
What was it about that made you realize it?
There's a window of time where we could essentially win at will. There was a point where it's like, well, we'll just work harder and we'll figure it out. And it continued to work over and over. When that started to fade, that's kind of an eye-opening moment.
So we were talking about economics earlier, and you look at NASCAR since 2015, Jeff Gordon, Tony Stewart, Dale Jr., Carl Edwards, Danica, Matt Kenseth, you could go on, all retired during that period. How much do you think economics played into that?
NASCAR's been going through quite a bit of change since Tony, even prior to Tony's retirement. The playoffs have changed a couple of times. The rules continue to change, and a lot of that is to help the bottom line. And ultimately, the bottom line has moved so much because the way fans consume our sport has changed a lot in the last 15 years or more. I would say that through earnings and potential for a team, it's been down probably 50%.
50?
Yeah, I would say that from a driver contract standpoint, from 2015 to where it is now is probably half.
Even for the top drivers?
For the top drivers, yeah. And what starts that whole process is the tune-in numbers. Tune-in numbers drive the sponsorship numbers. That obviously drives the purse, and then certainly the sponsorship on a given car that a driver shares in.
And then for the top drivers, when all of a sudden you have the realization to be a 50% pay cut, you've already had success and you're thinking about the grind in the 38 weeks, it gets to the point where it's like, why?
Yeah, I mean, it might weigh in on some. I was very aware of my investments and what they earn in a year. Yeah. And even at 50%, there's no way those investments were going to come close to that. So I always knew it was my greatest source of income.
On the financial front, though, what impact does that have on kind of the non-top drivers?
The great fortune of being a top driver and a 50% reduction, it's still a big number. And as the sport has been evolving and actually kind of on a downturn, and now I believe it is ticking up, but on that downturn, the guys on the bottom side, I've heard rumors where these drivers can't afford permanent or temporary insurance, which is just kind of standard issue in a sport with so much risk. And you hear drivers, I can't afford it, I'm not going to do it.
If you were running the sport and you could make any changes you wanted, what would you do?
I've always firmly felt that there's just too much racing in NASCAR.
Jump ahead to IndyCar and but preceding that, the impact that the Formula One ride in Bahrain had on you?
Being in an open wheel car, high downforce car, just blew my mind when I had a chance to drive the McLaren F1 car in Bahrain. And I started asking around if there's a way to get to Formula One.
That was something that really interested you.
Yeah, I knew that Formula One was owned by a US-based company. I know the need for an American-based driver in Formula One. And once I realized what it took to receive the license, that you have to kind of come up through the European Racing Series to earn enough points to earn the license to drive a Formula One car, I was like, it's not going to work. But I looked around, and that really got me thinking about driving open wheel cars.
And even if you didn't have to come up through the European racing circuit to get the license, like, what would you be doing to yourself? You would have just been stopping NASCAR because of the grind, and then you're gonna possibly go do Formula One. I mean,
I'm sure it's a grind. It's such a premier form of racing, but it's only like 20 races. So in my eyes, it's almost half.
Right.
So
I mean, it's like a global travel schedule. I mean,
that's one other thing that fuels my wife and I is travel. And so to think about working globally and traveling all these amazing places seemed pretty cool.
Was she on board with the idea at the time?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, if we could pull it off. Yeah, global racing, absolutely.
So you started looking into that, realized it wasn't going to happen, and then your head turns towards IndyCar.
It does, and at the time, the CEO of McLaren, Zach Brown, was open to me pursuing the path of Formula One, and then they also have an IndyCar. And in the beginning, that was really my first opportunity to drive an IndyCar, was the McLaren IndyCar. And again, just the experience of a single-seater, open-wheel car, high downforce. That's when I found my energy to pursue this, because up until that point, I really thought that full-time racing or such premier high-level racing was behind me.
A likelihood it continues beyond the 2 years?
I'm all about it. I'm actively trying to figure out how to end up in 23 and beyond. Just having so much fun doing it.
What's like involved with making that happen?
Having a seat available with the team, so wherever the team's plans are heading, and then clearly having the corporate support to do so. So my commitment's there, my family's buy-in and commitment's there. It's really just the team and sponsor pieces.
Have you now committed in your head to running the ovals?
I was convinced ovals weren't for me to start this process and sign a 2-year deal. So now it's kind of complicated mid-contract to sort it all out and see what the team's capable of doing.
It'd be nice to be on there next season.
Yes. Yeah, I would love to be in the Indy 500 next season. And then, if I'm running the 500, there's an argument. I would have a better 500 if I was to run the race before, which is Texas. And then if you run those 2 tracks, those are the fastest tracks.
I wanted to bring up, and you've covered these plenty of times before, but the first one being the Alltel car crash where the brakes give out. What do you remember from that?
Cars, you crash often, and some are gonna be bad, but that's really the first time when I just thought it was over and kind of went limp in the car. And thankfully I did, because preparing for the impact and lowering my head as I did and going limp was the best thing for me. This crash took place before soft walls were mandatory and before we had any of the mandatory restraint systems in the car to prevent a basal skull fracture, which is the injury that killed 5 drivers, and the 5th being Dale Earnhardt Sr.
What do you remember thinking it's happening?
And then I knew the racetrack went to the right, and I tried to make the turn, and I was into the grass and lost control of the car at that point. And I had no brakes. When I went to slow the car down, the brake pedal went to the floor. I had brake failure. And 150 miles an hour with no brakes. And on my way flying into those foam barriers, I thought the foam was concrete. And that's what led to me going limp in the car. And thankfully, it was a series of soft walls, and I was able to walk away from that crash.
The Baja 1000.
Yes.
And you lose control of your truck.
Baja was a wild experience because I literally woke up crashing. Sounds crazy, but
What do you mean?
I fell asleep. It's probably 3 or 4 in the morning. Been in this rough terrain, bouncing around, easy to stay awake. Finally got onto a smooth road and nice long straightaway, and I just got too comfortable and nodded off. And I woke up just before I went off the road, and there was a sharp 90-degree turn, and tried to hit the brakes, went straight off the road, and as I was going off the road, there was a huge boulder, and I hit this boulder, and the vehicle went straight up into the air, and I can recall seeing the headlights just shooting into the darkness, and I had no idea what I was gonna land on, and I was just coming out of a mountain range, how far I was gonna fall, and thankfully it was just a steep embankment, and tumbled off into the darkness out there.
What do you remember thinking about out there? Because you were out there for a while.
It was probably a full day before we had the truck onto a trailer to take it away. What's wild is this is a 95, so communications weren't like they are today. And then the team itself has vehicles that leapfrog the race truck going down the race course. Just in case you're not in radio communication, they can keep up with you. My chase truck, as it's called, got into a fender bender in a small little Mexican town, and my chase crew was arrested and put in jail. So
Really?
when I crashed, the vehicle that was supposed to find me, those guys are busy emptying their pockets and giving away everything they could to get out of jail.
And I don't know if more was made of this than that actually existed, but it caused you to reflect on kind of what you wanted to do?
I knew going into that race that my job was in question the next year. And here I am again with a totaled race truck, almost killed my co-rider. The crash, all the impact was on his side. And I had, give it a day to sit there and think about the aggression I had, and I was gonna be out of a job.
How well do you remember the embrace with your dad after that, when you guys met back up?
It was huge, and he told me before the race, you know, he had a dream, be careful. I'm like, you're crazy. And as I was sitting there in the darkness, vehicles would come by and I would stop them. Hey, we've crashed, we're fine. My dad's in the next pit, and everybody knew my dad. Please tell him I'm okay. And it was 60 miles away, they all forgot to tell my dad. So as I don't arrive, my dad knew this mountain range, knew that I've been in a crash. No one is reporting anything. Communication's so minimal, and he had to sit there with all of that for a long, long time. So when I saw him, there was a big embrace.
Do you remember what he said?
No, I remember tears, and I don't see tears very often with him.
And from you too, right?
Oh yeah. No, I was hanging on, and yeah, I had tears as well. But I'll never forget his face walking up to him and just seeing the relief.
What's this I hear, and I don't know if this is still the case, but that you get car sick when you aren't driving?
No, I do. It's weird, and it's getting worse the older I get. So if I'm driving, I'm fine, but you know, a cab in New York is a death sentence. Sitting in the front seat helps dramatically. Having a decent view also helps. Sitting backwards, no bueno.
You like living in Charlotte?
I do. It's been a great place.
A booming city.
Grown like crazy the last 4 or 5 years. But I moved here in '97 to chase the dream of racing. It's been a great place to live and to raise a family.
You think you guys stay here permanently, long term?
We're asking ourselves that question now. Now that I don't need to be here for work, we could live anywhere. I think a New York, Colorado rotation would work really nice.
Right. Super interesting that you somehow have this perception when you were younger in your career that you had a silver spoon.
Yeah.
When
so far from the truth.
You're one of the few that didn't.
Yeah.
Like how does that even work?
I had a simple upbringing, but I drove for these amazing teams, and haters, if you will, on the outside would say, oh, he has a silver spoon in his mouth. It's because of his parents.
Right, and what, because you drove for the amazing teams and you acted professional?
Correct. So it really didn't get under my skin. I was just like, what? We're all gonna have something labeled on us.
Right. Do you see your family kind of long-term always having a presence in the sport?
I feel like with what I was able to accomplish in NASCAR, that I want to stay involved. Don't know what that looks like, but be a part of it.
They're running your own teams?
I've never had a desire to own and run a team. I feel like at Hendrick, there could be an opportunity there for me, if I really wanted to get back in it and work. Do I look at television? Do I don't know what it would be, honestly.
And how old are the kids?
They are 11 and 8.
Could you see either of them getting into racing?
Maybe Lydia.
We are at Soco Gallery, a gallery I opened in 2015, and this is our main gallery space.
And how has Channy gotten you into art?
Really from kind of touring museums, seeing exhibitions, and then of course I was participating, going with her.
If Jimmie can get into art, anybody can get into art.
All right, so if you don't mind, can we you show us
come
around a little bit?
Come see this exhibition. So this is Beverly Fishman, a Detroit-based artist, and these are paintings. Actually, they look very sculptural, but these are paintings, and she uses automotive paint, so a nod to Jimmie's industry. I don't think I've ever seen an artist that could actually tie our two worlds together, and Bev has done that. But she's incredible, and we've enjoyed working with her.
And I understand, Jimmie, you were surprised one day when you were told that you guys would be hosting the gallery or the artists at your house.
We have a nice little back house and a loft that's up inside of it, and
it's become the artist residence. So
now we looked back, and Channy has a book out there for them to kind of sign, and I flipped through it, and I can't believe how many artists have stayed there.
Really?
And these amazing artists become friends essentially as well.
Yes. When artists come to Charlotte, they stay with us. They eat breakfast with our children and have dinner with our family.
You understand the story behind the art and how they get there, the materials they use, just became crazy interesting to me.
What's been involved with turning this place into what it is?
It's a huge undertaking, and I mean, just to put on this exhibition, so much goes into it. The goal was to bring in really incredible contemporary art to Charlotte and also find local artists or regional artists and put them out into the world. I think Charlotte is an incredible city, and I wanted us to be part of that contemporary art global conversation. And we have done that, which is really exciting.
God, I'm so freaked out, like we're gonna bump into something.
Yeah, don't bump into the art.
How do you propose?
We were in Beaver Creek, and I remember Jimmie said, "Wear your best outfit today. We're going to take photos." I thought, that's strange. And we were, snowboarding down the mountain.
Snowboarding down, yeah.
And a photographer was with us, and he said, "He's coming with us to take photos." I thought, that's interesting. They don't usually do that. I should have known. And before I knew it, he was proposing.
It was a little awkward when I went down on a knee. She thought she was supposed to kneel for the photo as well. I was like, no, honey, you need to stand for this. Like, what? No, please stand.
How's life changed since kids?
I mean, in every way, life has changed. Before the better. It's been amazing. They're such fun children, and we're having a blast with them. Jimmie loves to dirt bike with Lydia, and both girls ride horses, and we take them everywhere. They go everywhere in their life.
And on this, kind of a loaded question, but why do you think the relationship works?
We're great partners, and I think there's a lot of mutual respect and love and support.
I just add to that, like, the support for one another to chase whatever you want to chase. Like, she's supported me through this whole journey, and when she thought it was over, and I've found IndyCar, and she continues to support. And then the building we're sitting in was something that as an example, I was like